What's up, guys? We're back with another Masters of the Universe Masterverse review, taking a look at Wave 2's Beastman. So this is another figure in the line that gets a little bit of a redesign. It's not as crazy as some. You know, some don't really get any, some get a lot, and then he kind of falls in the middle a little bit. So we've of course got him here in our standard Revelation Masterverse style packaging. So it's that blue Eternian hieroglyph kind of thing that they've got going. Figure there in the window, Revelation logo down on the bottom. You've got a really nice artwork piece that runs down one side, name on the other, and then another larger bit of artwork on the back with a bio as well as a cross-sell for Wave 1 and 2. So let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Masterverse Revelation Beastman, a figure that honestly at first really wasn't doing it for me, and I'm honestly not really sure why. Like when I got him out of the package, I was just sort of underwhelmed. I guess it's because there's ultimately not a lot that's going on with this guy. But once I started messing around with him, I realized, yeah, this is a pretty solid Beastman for a few reasons in particular. I mean, he does very much look like his Revelation counterpart, which, you know, is the sort of disheveled guy, Beastman guy with, you know, a skirt piece on. But there's a little bit more added bulk to this figure in some ways, specifically around like the shins and the forearms and the hands, and everything's a little bit elongated on him, especially because of these forearms and hands that kind of make him look a little bit more ferocious and a little bit more imposing. So ultimately I kind of came around on him. It didn't take too long, but at first he wasn't as exciting when, you know, I had him and, say, Man-at-Arms and Spike-Ore in my hand. So let's get started, see what he can do, see how he moves around. You're probably going to know exactly what he can do. But the head can look up. He can't look down too much because he has, you know, the beard. You've got a little bit of tilt, not much, but he does have a little bit. And then you've got full rotation, but he hunches forward, so you've got that weird situation where he's sort of doing this when you rotate his head. He doesn't have, you know, rotation 360 degrees around like that. Arms go out at the shoulders. They rotate all the way around. We've got our bicep swivel. You've got your double jointed elbows. They go about that far back. He does have slightly larger arms than some of the other figures because he's got, you know, this new, well, Beastman sculpt. Stinkor uses some of these parts as well. And then you've got hinges and rotation at the wrist. He's got a diaphragm cut, of course, so he goes backwards slightly. He hunches forward a lot, and that's really what he's supposed to do. So he's supposed to be hunched like this most of the time, but you can get him to sort of lurch back a little bit, and he looks a little bit bigger and, you know, a little bit meaner. You do have really good tilt, though. It's not really a rotation point, but you do have your waist twist for that. Legs go out pretty far, almost all the way. They kick forward really good as well because the, you know, the skirt piece does not really get in the way. He kicks backward. You've got your thigh cut there. We've got double jointed knees, but he's got these fur spikes that stick out of the back of his ankles, so they stop him from going too far back. We've got a boot cut, well, shin swivel here really, and then you've got really good rocker and hinges down at those ankles. So he is very much a standard kind of figure for this line, but at the same time, he is a little bit different because of his construction. So he's got, you know, slightly larger forearms, much larger hands than any other figure in this line, and then he's supposed to sort of lurch forward a little bit, which does, of course, skew how his head's able to move, but he also does have a better ab crunch as a result because there's really nothing getting in the way. I mean, that's really good. He can hunch over really far. So overall, he moves very similarly to a lot of the figures in this line, but at the same time, he kind of has his own modified articulation scheme, which does work really nicely. Now, aesthetically, that's where I really came to like this figure at the end, ultimately, I suppose, because when you really pay attention to this guy, you see that there is a lot of stuff here. And when I did the Stinkor review, you know, because I got these out of order, so I had to do Stinkor first, I assumed that Stinkor shared parts because they're both furry figures, and they do. You know, they share things like shoulders, biceps, thighs, things of that nature, but Beastman has these accentuated parts to make him seem a little bit less than human because, like, his forearms are massive. His ankles and calves are much bigger than some of the other figures, not to mention the fact that they are bulkier as well. So they are longer and thicker in many ways. And then he has these massive, like, you know, like gorilla-size hands almost. So he has some accentuated features that when you get him in hand, they look really cool, and you kind of realize, okay, this isn't just a furry He-Man body, they actually did go a little bit extra on this guy to make him something special. So he's got things like this big fur mane on his back, which I really like. It's just cast in brown plastic, but it breaks him up and it looks really good. He, of course, has the fully furry body. Now, that was almost a little bit difficult to say, but you do have some accents on it, like the the forearms have some hits of extra sculpt there. The calves have those fur spikes, like I mentioned, and the feet also have some extra fur sculpted on them. Also, there are subtle hints of shading in a few areas on the figure, like the biceps and the thighs. It's kind of hard to see, but there is a little bit of shading there. He's got some scarring on his chest, so you've got some scars that peek through the fur. The loincloth, the skirt piece here, is super, super vibrant and bright, and it very much clashes with the figure, so it stands out. It breaks him up a little bit, and of course it hides his beast junk down there. You do have a holster here for his whip that we'll talk about here in a minute, but he just looks really cool, and like when you get him in hand, it's like, yeah, this is a slightly more monstrous Beastman. He's not huge and hulking by any means, but it's little things that they did, and I'm kind of hung up on him the more I think about him, is the longer forearms, the bulkier forearms, and the big hands that like hang down past his knees almost. They make him seem a little bit more imposing and a little bit more menacing while he's still very close to the same size as the majority of the figures in the line. And then not to mention the fact that he is covered in that fur sculpt that catches the light, so it breaks him up. It makes him look a lot more detailed than a bunch of other figures, especially when you compare him to like He-Man, who has that really weird textured torso that has no business being there. He has all this extra detail that does belong on the figure. And then he's topped off with a really, really solid head sculpt. I really like this. I think it could probably use a little bit more shading on what would be, well, not the flesh, but the fur. So the actual browny orange fur that he has. I feel like a little bit of a wash would be good in there, but the spikes that run down his head look really good. The sort of war paint on the eyes and that expression. This is the Beastman expression, especially for this show and this version. The teeth showing, the gritting of the teeth, very angry, very battle ready, and then that beard with the braids all in there. I just think it completes a look for this particular figure that works really well. Not to mention the fact that I don't think his head is awkwardly sized like I do some of the other figures in this line. It's not a universal thing, but I pick up on it on a handful of figures every now and then. But I think Beastman kind of comes out on top. He does look really, really nice. I think he shines once you get him in hand and just pay a little attention to all the stuff that goes into making him. Now, as far as accessories goes, Beastman doesn't really have a lot. He's very much in the same boat as Man-at-Arms, where he comes with essentially the stuff that I want, but that doesn't mean he comes with a lot of stuff. So out of the box, he's got a sort of open palm style pose hand and a gripping hand. And of course you get the opposing hand. So you get a left style pose, you get a right gripping hand, and of course these are huge, but you also get a full set of fists, which, you know, we don't always get with this particular line. Not every figure has a full set, but I'm happy to get these. And then he comes with his signature weapon, which of course is his whip. This is the one thing that I'm really not all that happy with when it comes to this figure. I think it's the one thing that kind of brings him down, because while this has a very vintage feel to it, and I mean the handle looks good and it's really bulky, it's huge, I find the string to just be meh at best. Like there's nothing exciting here, and it's impossible to really make this too dynamic. I would much rather have had this be some sort of bendy cord if that was possible, or, and I don't know if this is even the best option, to have it just be a static piece of posed plastic, which ultimately would be its own problem, but I'm not sure this is a better thing. I feel like this is just far too dated for this kind of line, but this does store on his hip in the holster right there, so you can pop it in, and you can like wrap the string around the handle to make it sort of tighten up a little bit. You know, give it one of these numbers, and then store it away, so it looks fine when it's on him for the most part. But I don't think it looks all that great when it's actually in use, because it just sort of flops out on the ground. So yeah, overall, I really like this guy. I think the only real negative for him is the fact that I'm not a big fan of his accessory. I feel like it just kind of falls flat. That whip, while the handle looks cool and it looks, you know, devious and menacing and pain-inducing, I feel like it's just a boring accessory when it comes to actually using it, because it just sort of flops on the ground, or it just sort of dangles haphazardly around. It's hard to make something like this into a dynamic effect when it's just a piece of, you know, string that's all over the place. Otherwise, without harping on that too much, he does look fantastic. He introduces some unique stuff to make him seem a little bit bigger and menacing than your average figure. Sculpt on him is great, solid paintwork, great head sculpt, and overall just a bit of a surprise for me. I honestly wasn't expecting to be all that happy with him overall, because he is kind of basic at first glance, but when you get him, this is just a really fun Beastman figure, and I'm really happy with him. So that's going to do it for this look at the Masters of the Universe Masterverse Revelation Beastman. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.